Milestone 19, Guesthouse. Written by Thwe, Sett, Shan, me. Bang. The explosive sound of a blown tire shattered the quiet dusk. The heavy Hilux truck swerved violently off the dirt road, skidding into the tall grass with a sickening crunch. Ooh, Tin Hla. How the hell are you driving? Thwe yelled from the back seat, nursing his bruised shoulder. Tin Hla gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. The gravel, it blew the tire, young boss, and we used our only spare yesterday. Kong Hatet pushed the passenger door open and stepped out into the humid air. Wilderness surrounded them on all sides. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky a deep, bruised purple. Zarchi furiously dusted her clothes as she climbed out. This is a disaster, Kohtu. I am not sleeping in this creepy forest. Behind her, Maypyo shivered. The air was dead. There were no crickets chirping, no birds singing, no wind rustling the bamboo. The silence was suffocatingly heavy. Look, a sign. Tin Hla pointed a shaking finger. Half hidden among the dense, twisted trees stood an old, peeling wooden sign, Milestone 19 Guesthouse entrance. Having no other choice, the six of them grabbed their bags and walked down the narrow, darkening path. 15 minutes later, the trees broke, revealing a wide clearing. In the center stood a massive, decaying colonial-style mansion made of dark red bricks. Not a single light was on. It sat in total, pitch-black silence. Suddenly, the heavy double doors groaned open. An old man stepped out from the deep shadows. A prominent, jagged scar cut across his withered face. He held a flickering kerosene lamp that barely pushed back the darkness. Did you guess lose your way? His voice was dry and hollow, like grinding stones. Our truck broke down. Thwe stepped forward. We need rooms. I'll pay whatever you want. The old man pushed the doors wide open. No money needed, but there is one rule. What rule? After midnight, absolutely no one comes down to the first floor. The temperature dropped drastically the moment they stepped inside. The grand living room felt like a freezer. Massive oil paintings of stern military officers hung on the walls, their painted eyes seemingly tracking the guests' every movement. The caretaker tossed a thick, dust-covered ledger onto the table. Write your names. Thwe quickly scribbled the 6 names. There. Thwe, Zarchi, Kong Hatit, Kyo Swar, Maypyo, and Tin Hla. 6 of us. As he reached to close the book, the old man clamped his cold, hard hand over Thwe's wrist. Write down the rest, the caretaker demanded. What about the other one? Silence fell over the room. Kyo Swar laughed nervously. What other one? There are only 6 of us. The old man furrowed his brows. He pointed a long, bony finger at the group, counting them slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. His finger stopped abruptly, pointing directly at the dark, empty corner right behind Maypyo. Oh, the old man muttered, a chilling smile stretching his scarred face. She's not with you? My eyes must be failing me. I thought another girl came in with you. Click. The iron bolt slid into place with a heavy thud, sealing May Pyu inside the cavernous room. Kong Hatet had insisted she lock the door, but the sound only amplified her isolation. The air in the room was stagnant, heavy with the suffocating scent of damp earth and old mushrooms. In the far corner sat an antique vanity mirror. The glass was blackened and cloudy with age, turning May Pyu's reflection into a distorted, looming shadow. She tried to ignore it, lighting 2 candles to push back the encroaching gloom. Hoping to calm her nerves, she stepped into the attached bathroom. The wooden door let out a long, agonizing shriek as she pushed it open. She turned the rusted faucet, but it only hissed like a dying snake, blowing out dry air. Fortunately, a small pool of water remained in the stone tank. The water was unnaturally cold, stinging her skin like needles of ice. As she reached for a towel to dry her face, a sound made her heart stop. Splash, splash. Someone was gently slapping the surface of the water inside the tank. She yanked the towel away, her eyes wide with terror, but the water's surface was a perfect, unbroken mirror. It's just my mind, she whispered, her voice trembling. She bolted back into the bedroom, diving under the heavy blankets. Sleep came, but it brought no peace. In her dream, the candles were dead. Only a sickly, pale moonlight filtered through the window. May Pyo tried to scream, but her body was leaden, trapped in the suffocating grip of sleep paralysis. Drip, drip, drip. The sound didn't come from the bathroom. It came from the foot of her bed. Standing there was a woman. Her tangled hair was a wet, matted mess, and her white nightgown was plastered with green algae and mud. Black, putrid water dripped from her hem, pooling on the floor. The woman slowly tilted her head up. There were no eyes, only empty, cavernous black holes staring back from a bloated, translucent face. Her decaying lips parted, a wet, rasping sound escaping. Not 6, 7. There are 7. Long, skeletal fingers wrapped around May Pyo's ankle. The touch was agonizingly cold, like frozen metal. The ghost began to crawl up the bed, inch by horrifying inch, until the stench of rotting pond water forced its way into May Pyo's lungs. Are you the 7th? Ah! May Pyo bolted upright, gasping for air as her scream finally tore free. She was drenched in cold sweat. A dream. It was just a dream. But the freezing sensation on her ankle remained. Trembling, she pulled back the blanket. There, wrapped around her pale ankle, was a dark, muddy handprint smeared with green algae. Bang, bang, bang. May Pyo opened the door. Kong Hatet's frantic voice shattered the silence. She tackled the bolt and fell into his arms, sobbing. Kong Hatet shined his flashlight across the room, and Kyo swore, let out a choked gasp. Leading from the foot of May Pyo's bed were wet, muddy footprints. The toes were unnaturally long, the tracks sharp, unclear on the wooden floor. The footprints weren't coming out of the bathroom. They were going in. Episode 3, The Master Awakens. The room felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were sweating. Thwe lay on the bed, exhaling a cloud of cigarette smoke, completely dismissing Zarchi's dread with a sharp, mocking laugh. But as Zarchi sat before the clouded vanity, the brush froze in her hand. In the blackened glass, the reflection wasn't her own. A pale, hollow-eyed woman was resting her chin right on Zarchi's shoulder. Then came the knocking. Slow, rhythmic. The caretaker's dry voice bled through the wood, warning them that the room was wrong and they had to leave immediately. Thwe, his temper flaring, yanked the door open. Nothing. Only a hollow, empty hallway stretching into the dark. Suddenly, the light bulb exploded with a violent pop, plunging them into a total void. Zarchi's shriek shattered the silence. An invisible force had clamped onto her legs, dragging her toward the black maw beneath the bed. Kong Tet, Kiao Swar, and Mei Pyo burst in, joining Thwe as they grabbed Zarchi's arms in a desperate, lung-bursting tug-of-war. From the shadows under the mattress, a guttural, non-human growl vibrated through the floorboards. They scrambled into the corridor, where they found Yu Tin Kla clutching a wooden rosary. His eyes were wide with a terror even greater than theirs. "We have to stay alive in this house," he whispered, his voice trembling, "until the sun comes up." Kong Hatet slammed the kitchen door shut. U Tin Hla and Kiao Swore shoved a heavy wooden table against it as a barricade. Outside, those heavy, rhythmic footsteps stopped right at the entrance. No one breathed. Zarchi covered her mouth, her face wet with tears. "The back door! Check the back door!" Hatu Paying hissed. Kong Hatet and Hatu Paying sprinted to the rear exit, but it wouldn't budge. It was bolted from the outside. The kitchen was massive and filthy. Rusty meat hooks dangled from the ceiling over stained chopping blocks. The air was thick with the stench of rotten meat and rancid oil. "They're here," Mei Pyo whispered. "Who?" Kyo Swore asked, his voice cracking. Mei Pyo pointed to a dark corner where the shadows seemed to move. She saw them clearly, emaciated figures with iron chains around their necks, tearing into raw, bloody meat. "Hungry, so hungry," the voices rasped through the air. Suddenly, the meat hooks began to swing violently. A heavy cleaver lifted itself off the counter and shot across the room like a bullet. "Get down!" Kong Hatet tackled Hatu Pien to the floor. The blade buried itself deep into the door, missing Kong Hatet's head by inches. Then the front door began to splinter. "Open up! I am famished," a deep, booming voice demanded. The master. "The window! Kick it out!" Kong Hatet pointed to a small glass pane above the sink. Thwe shattered the glass and vaulted through. They scrambled out one by one. Just as Kong Hatet climbed up, the kitchen door exploded. Standing in the doorway was a man in a crisp military uniform, but there was no head, just a ragged, bloody stump. He was casually dragging the caretaker's lifeless body by the ankle. They tumbled out of the window, but they weren't in the forest. They were in an enclosed yard filled with wooden posts. Chained to every post were bleached, decaying skeletons. They hadn't escaped. They had just entered the master's killing field. We sprinted for a small shed in the corner of the yard. Behind us, the hellhounds were gaining ground, their barks sounding like thunder. We burst through the door and slammed it shut just as the lead hound lunged. Inside, the walls were covered with hundreds of photographs. Every single one was a group of past guests. Some had their eyes burned out, others were crossed out in red. Then we wound the trunk. It was full of bloody wallets, watches, and ID cards. They didn't want their money. Thwe whispered, holding a blood-stained wallet. They wanted their lives. In the bottom of the trunk was an old photo of the master and a young servant. We looked at the photo, then at Thwe. It was a perfect match. I had no choice, Thwe sobbed, pulling open his shirt. On his chest was a brutal brand, the number 19. To save his own daughter, he had to bring new victims to the master every 10 years. We had no time for anger. The hounds were breaking through the door. Thwe led us through a hidden trapdoor into the mansion's basement. The room was vast, lit by a sickly green glow from the walls. And then we saw it. Mountains of gold coins and rubies. Thwe's fear vanished instantly. He dove into the treasure, stuffing his pockets. "Leave it, Thwe. Let's go," Kong Tet shouted. But Thwe didn't listen. He only saw the gold. From the top of the gold pile, a woman in crimson silk unfurled like a spider. Her eyes and lips were stitched shut with thick black thread. She scurried down the wall with sickening speed, pinning Thwe to the floor. "You want the gold?" she hissed, the threads on her lips snapping one by one. "Eat it." She grabbed fistfuls of gold coins and forced them down Thwe's throat. He gagged and thrashed, but the coins kept coming. The last thing we saw were his bulging eyes as he choked to death on his own greed. We slammed the iron door shut, leaving Thwe's final muffled gags behind us. There was no time to mourn. We were in a narrow tunnel, cramped and reeking of mold and stagnant water. Then came the water. It started at our ankles, but soon it was waist deep, freezing and black. Koya swore was shaken. He'd always been terrified of the water. "Something's touching my legs," May Pugh whispered, her voice trembling. Splash! A pale hand shot out from the dark water and clamped onto Kyo Swar's ankle. He went down instantly. When he surfaced, he was thrashing, but thick, wet masses of black hair were already wrapping around his throat and arms like leashes. Kong Hatet lunged for him, but a clump of hair plastered itself over Kyo Swar's face, silencing his screams. Kong Hatet plunged his knife into the water, and thick, black blood bubbled up, but the hair wouldn't let go. Kyo Swar's eyes locked onto Kong Hatet's one last time before he was dragged into the black depths. We reached the end of the tunnel, but it wasn't an exit. We were at the bottom of a massive dry stone well. He, he, the caretaker was peering over the edge, 30 feet above us. His neck was snapped, his head hanging sideways at a grotesque angle. He hoisted a massive boulder, ready to crush us. "I'll boost you up. Go," Utin Hala shouted. He heaved Kong Tet onto the rusted rungs of the well wall. Kong Tet scrambled up and pulled the girls to safety. But below, the water ghosts were rising from the tunnel, their decaying hands grabbing at Utin Hala. "Tell my daughter her father isn't coming home," Utin Hala whispered. He flicked his lighter and dropped it into a pool of kerosene near the tunnel entrance. A wall of fire erupted, engulfing Utin Hala and the shrieking spirits of the well. We climbed over the edge, gasping for air, but the nightmare wasn't over. On the balcony above us stood the headless master, and in his hand, held by the hair, was Utin Hala's freshly severed head. We ran through the mud, heading for the front gate. Zarchi was barely moving, her mind shattered by the horror. Kong Hatet sprinted to the guardhouse and grabbed the keys just as a scream tore through the rain. Standing at the gate was Thwe Peng, but it wasn't him. His stomach was bloated and gold coins spilled from his rotting, wide-open jaw. He shambled towards Zarchi, his voice a wet, gargling mess. "Zar, come here. We're rich." Zarchi, lost in grief, ran into his cold embrace. But he didn't hold her. He crushed her. He bit into her face, tearing flesh as the gold coins poured over her. Kong Hatet slashed at the ghost, but it was too late. We had to leave her. We bolted through the gates and didn't look back. We reached the truck. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. We drove for an hour, but the air inside turned freezing. The stench of the basement filled the cabin. Kong Hatet glanced at the rear view mirror. Thwe Peng was sitting in the back seat, his dead eyes fixed on us. "Did you think you could leave me?" Invisible hands clamped around Kong Hatet's throat. Mei Pyo saw a single gold coin on the floor, leaking black smoke. She grabbed it, burning her hands, and hurled it out the window. The ghost vanished, but the nightmare was just beginning. Ahead, the headlights hit a white pillar. Milestone 19. We had been driving for an hour, but we were right back where we started. Standing by the road was the headless master holding Utin Hala's head. "Welcome back," the severed head whispered. We jumped from the truck and sprinted past the milestone just as the first light of dawn broke the horizon. The spirits hissed and melted in the sun. We were alive. We were free. 10 years later, Kong Hatet sat in his van, looking at his daughter's drawing. It was a red brick mansion with 5 faceless stick figures. "The old man in my dreams says they're waiting. Daddy," she whispered. Kong Hatet rolled up his sleeve. The scar on his arm, the number 19, was glowing red, weeping fresh blood. "I have to go, Mei Pyo," he said. "If I don't, they'll come for her." He drove to the highway and pulled over for 6 college students waving for a ride. He looked in his mirror. Sitting in the back rows were the rotting spirits of his dead friends, smiling at the new guests. Heading to the next town, uncle? The leader asked. Hoping. Kaong Hatet whispered as the automatic locks clicked. I've been driving this road for 10 years. The cycle never ends.